The storm did not arrive politely or with warning, it slammed into the plains like a charging beast, tearing the sky apart with thunder and dragging curtains of rain behind it. One moment the horizon was merely dark, the next it was swallowing the land whole. Tom Calder felt it in his bones before he fully saw it, that deep pressure that made old injuries ache and horses snort with unease. He tightened the reins and leaned forward in the saddle, his coat snapping violently in the wind as dust turned to mud beneath pounding hooves. The sky bruised from gray to nearly black, clouds folding over one another as if the heavens themselves were collapsing. Wind screamed across the open land, flattening tall grass and ripping loose pebbles from the earth. Lightning tore a white scar across the sky, followed instantly by a thunderclap so loud it rattled Tom's teeth. His horse shied, muscles bunching, and Tom murmured low, steady words, more for himself than the animal. He had ridden through storms before, but this one felt different, angrier, closer, alive. Rain began as needles, driven sideways, stinging his face and soaking through layers in seconds. Hail followed, small at first, then harder, bouncing off his hat brim and shoulders. Tom scanned the land, squinting through the chaos, searching for any sign of shelter. A rocky outcrop lay somewhere ahead, he knew that much, but distance had become a lie in the twisting storm. Everything looked closer and farther all at once. Then he heard it. At first, Tom thought it was the wind playing tricks, a high-pitched whistle caught between thunderclaps. He urged his horse to slow, straining his ears. There it was again, thin, broken, unmistakably human. A cry. Not a coyote, not the wind. A child. His pulse kicked hard against his ribs. Common sense screamed at him to keep moving, to reach shelter before the storm claimed him too. The land had a way of punishing hesitation. But the cry came again, sharper this time, edged with terror, and Tom turned his horse without another thought, steering toward the sound. Visibility dropped as he rode, rain blurring the world into gray streaks. Lightning flashed, freezing the scene for a heartbeat, and that was when he saw them. A shallow ravine cut into the earth, water rushing through it faster by the second. An Apache woman stood ankle-deep in the muddy surge, clutching a small boy to her chest. Her hair clung to her face, her clothes heavy and dark with water. The child's arms were wrapped around her neck, his face buried against her shoulder as he cried. The ravine was becoming a trap. Rainwater poured down from higher ground, swelling the channel, dragging debris with it. Another lightning strike revealed how close the water already was to rising past the woman's knees. Tom swung down from his horse, boots sinking into mud at once. The cold bit through him instantly. He raised his hands, palms open, careful, deliberate. Old stories and old blood weighed heavily between them, carved into the land as deeply as wagon ruts and forgotten trails. The woman's eyes locked onto him, dark, sharp, frightened, but not broken. She shifted her stance slightly, instinctively putting herself between him and the child. "It's all right," Tom shouted, though the wind tore the words apart. He pointed toward higher ground, then back at them, miming lifting. "Storm's bad. Water's rising." She didn't answer, but another thunderclap rolled overhead, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The water surged higher, splashing against her legs. The child cried out again, clutching tighter. That decided it. Tom stepped forward into the ravine. The current pushed against his calves, stronger than it looked, tugging at him as if testing his balance. He reached them in 3 careful steps. Up close, he could see how exhausted the woman was, how her arms trembled under the weight of fear and cold. He gestured again, slower now, then shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around the child before lifting him gently. For one terrifying second, the woman resisted, fingers digging into the boy's shoulders. Then she looked at the water, at the dark sky pressing down, and released him. Tom cradled the child against his chest, feeling how small and light he was, how violently he shook. He turned, fighting the current, every step a struggle as the storm roared its fury above them. Reaching the edge of the ravine, Tom braced himself and extended a hand back to the woman. She took it without hesitation now, her grip strong despite the cold. Together they climbed, mud sliding beneath them, rain hammering down as if the sky meant to drive them back. Tom's horse stood above, head low, mane plastered to its neck, but steady. With effort and a prayer Tom didn't remember learning, he lifted the child onto the saddle, then helped the woman climb up behind him. She wrapped one arm around the boy and the other around Tom's waist, holding on as if letting go would mean death. Tom swung up in front, turned the horse toward the rocks he'd been aiming for all along, and kicked gently. The ride felt endless. Wind shoved at them, hail rattled against bone and leather, and lightning struck so close once that Tom smelled burning air. He hunched forward, shielding the child as best he could, guiding the horse by instinct more than sight. When the rocky outcrop finally loomed ahead, it felt like a miracle carved from stone. They reached the shelter just as the storm reached its peak. Tom slid down, legs shaking, and helped the woman dismount. Under the rocks, the wind softened slightly, rain still pouring but less vicious. The child whimpered softly now, exhausted tears replacing panicked cries. Tom knelt, rubbing warmth back into his hands, then began gathering what dry twigs he could find to start a fire. Behind him, the woman whispered to her son in a low, steady voice, words flowing like a prayer. Tom didn't understand them, but he understood the sound: comfort, promise, survival. He struck a spark, coaxed a small flame to life, and fed it carefully until warmth began to spread through the narrow shelter. Outside, the storm raged, furious and relentless. Inside, 3 lives pressed close to the fire, breathing, alive. Tom stood at the edge of the rocks for a long moment, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on the chaos beyond. He felt the storm's power, felt how close it had come to taking everything. And as thunder rolled overhead once more, he knew this night would never leave him, no matter how many miles of open land lay ahead. Morning arrived cautiously, as if the land itself were unsure whether the storm had truly finished with it. Gray light seeped through torn clouds, revealing a world reshaped overnight. The plains glistened with pooled rainwater, and the air smelled clean but heavy, thick with wet earth and broken branches. Tom Calder woke slowly, every muscle stiff, his back pressed against cold stone. For a moment he listened, half expecting thunder to roar again, but there was only silence, wide, fragile silence. The fire had burned down to glowing embers. Tom stirred them gently, coaxing a little more warmth from what remained. Nearby, the Apache woman sat upright, awake, her posture straight despite the long night. Her son slept against her side, wrapped in Tom's coat, his small chest rising and falling in calm, even breaths. The sight eased something in Tom's chest he hadn't realized was still tight. She watched him as he worked, eyes thoughtful now rather than wary. When Tom finally spoke, his voice sounded rough, scraped raw by wind and rain. He told her his name, tapping his chest lightly. Tom. She nodded once, then answered in a quiet, steady voice. Naya. She placed a hand gently on the child's shoulder. Kiona. Tom repeated the names carefully, wanting to get them right. He poured water into his tin cup and offered it to her first. She hesitated only a second before accepting, sipping slowly, then passing it to the boy when he stirred awake. Kiona blinked up at Tom, fear flickering briefly in his eyes before curiosity took its place. He clutched the cup with both hands, drinking as if afraid it might vanish. As the light strengthened, Naya began to speak more, her words simple, mixed with gestures and pauses. She told him how their camp had been set near a dry wash, how the sky had darkened too fast, how the water came roaring down like a wall. They had run, but the storm scattered everyone. Tom listened without interrupting, nodding when understanding crossed the gaps between their languages. Loss lived in her voice, but so did resolve. When the sun finally broke free of the clouds, Tom stood and stretched, joints protesting. He saddled his horse, checking straps and hooves carefully. The animal bore scratches from flying debris but seemed strong. Tom pointed toward the eastern ridge, tracing the line with his finger. People, he said. Apache. He mimed smoke rising, then walking. Naya's face tightened with hope and worry intertwined. She gathered Kiona into her arms, murmuring softly, and nodded. The journey began quietly. The land bore scars everywhere, flattened grass, uprooted shrubs, streams where none had existed before. Tom rode slowly, letting Naya and the child walk when the ground allowed, lifting Kiona onto the saddle when fatigue set in. As they traveled, small moments passed between them that needed no words. Tom shared the last of his dried meat. Naya adjusted the boy's wrap when it slipped. Once, when Tom stumbled crossing a slick rock, Naya reached out instinctively, steadying him. Their eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement of trust earned under brutal skies. By midday, the land began to rise. From the slope of a low hill, Tom spotted movement in the distance, dark shapes against sunlit ground. He slowed, heart quickening, aware of how delicate this moment was. Naya saw them too. She stopped walking, breath catching, then dropped to one knee, pulling Kiona close as if afraid he might dissolve into air. A sharp call rang out from ahead. Another answered it. Figures emerged more clearly now: men, women, children. Naya stood, her voice lifting in response, trembling but strong. Kiona let go of her hand and ran forward, small legs pumping with sudden energy. Naya followed, and the space between separation and reunion vanished in a rush of movement and sound. Tom stayed where he was, one hand resting on his saddle horn. He watched as Naya was surrounded, hands touching her shoulders, her face, voices overlapping in relief and disbelief. An older man stepped forward, gaze settling on Tom. His eyes were measuring, not hostile, but serious. He said something to Naya, who turned and looked back at Tom. She walked toward him slowly, Kiona at her side. She spoke to the elder again, then to Tom, placing a hand over her heart and bowing her head slightly. The elder approached next, followed by two others. They stopped a few steps away, then, deliberately, stepped aside, opening a clear path through the group. It was an invitation, a sign of respect. Tom felt his throat tighten. He shook his head gently and touched the brim of his hat instead. "Just helping," he said softly, unsure if the words mattered. Naya smiled, a small, genuine smile, and placed something into his hand. A simple beaded cord, worn smooth with time. "For remembering," she said. Tom closed his fingers around it, nodding once. He mounted his horse and turned away before the moment grew heavier than it needed to be. As he rode, he felt eyes on his back, but there was no fear in it now, only recognition. The plains stretched wide again as the sun lowered, painting the land gold. Tom rode alone, but not unchanged. Behind him, an Apache family had been made whole. Within him, something had shifted, a quiet understanding that courage, offered without condition, could outlast storms and histories alike.